In this video lesson, we are going to talk about how to graph root functions. So, what are the basic concepts of root functions? Well, they're functions that have a square root with an x inside. So, for example, y equals root x is the simplest you can get. And this is just what its graph looks like. And I'm going to point out a few points here. We have the point 1, 1 and 4, 2. So what do I mean? I mean that if we plug in x equals 1, the root of 1 is just 1. And if we plug in x equals 4, the square root of 4 is 2. So these are 2 points that we know are in it. Also, if you plug in x equals 0, of course y will equal to 0. And just sort of, this is the curve, this is the way it's shaped. And all you really need to know is the basic shape of the curve. And a few points it goes through is also useful. So now we're going to talk about how to graph root functions that are not just the root of x. So, for example, what happens if we do root x plus 1? It's a very similar function. All we've done is added 1. What will this change on the graph? Well, I can actually just show you in relation to the graph of y equals root x. Since we're adding 1, that just means that at every point we go 1 higher. That is, we're going to have the exact same graph, but it's going to be shifted up 1. The vertical distance between the two should be 1. And so that's what the graph is going to look like. Just like the one that we had before, but it's going to be shifted up by 1 unit. So now I can draw it without the original graph, and this is just what it's going to look like. It goes up, but it sort of slows down. It's not a straight line, it's a curve. You just have to remember its basic shape. So now let's do a different example. This time we're going to have something inside of the square root. For example, root of x minus 1. We're not subtracting 1 on the outside of the square root, we're doing it on the inside. And this is different. Now I'm going to talk briefly about one thing. If you remember anything about the domain of root functions, you just know that the root of x only works for x greater than or equal to 0. Well, similarly, the root of x minus 1 works only for x greater than or equal to 1. The thing inside of the square root has to be greater than or equal to 0, or you don't have a real number. So what I mean is that we have the same graph as before, but it just starts at x equals 1 instead of at x equals 0. It's shifted to the right by 1 unit. So when we subtract directly from the x on the inside of the square root, we shift horizontally. So what happens, for example, if we have sort of a combination of the last two examples? Y equals root x minus 1, all plus 1. Well, we know that the plus 1 shifts it up 1, and that the minus 1 inside of the square root shifts it to the right 1. So what I've just drawn, with its starting point shifted up and to the right by 1, is exactly what we want. So now let's do a completely new example with different numbers and see what it looks like. Y equals the square root of x plus 2 minus 3. So this is going to be pretty much the same function as just the square root of x, but it's going to have some shifts. Now we have a 2, and so it shifts 2, and we have to decide the direction, and the direction is to the left. It's to the left because it's inside the square root, so it has to be horizontal. And it's plus, so it's to the left. On the outside we have minus 3, and since it's negative, it's going to be down. So here I'm just sketching what the square root of x looks like. This is y equals root x. So now we're just going to shift the starting point 2 to the left and 3 down to this point. And we're going to make the same graph here, just translated to the side, shifted to the side and down. And so this is what the graph of our function root x plus 2 all minus 3 looks like. And of course, it's a good idea to label your graphs. So here I'm doing that up on top. And that's all. I hope you found this video lecture helpful. Thank you for watching.